And it will go to work on...
It'll clear the air. It'll clear the air because it will generate the devices that we design and build. They will cause the development of an implosive vortex.
Talk about what implosion is,
An
please.
implosive vortex, a vortex that goes inward.
Okay.
And an implosive vortex will entrain atmospheric pollution and drive it right to the ground. And it takes the pollution out of the air that way. So it doesn't matter how much pollution you put up in the air, if you have enough of those vortex generators, and they cost, perhaps $100 each to make.
That's it?
Yeah.
So we could have these vortex generators?
You can have all you want.
All over the country and all over the world?
Right.
Eliminating smog and cleaning the air?
Right. But that's not what the political people want.
But it doesn't really matter what the political people want. It matters what the humanity needs.
Yeah, well, then they'll come around and make sure that you don't get to do this. Because you're attacking a very large body of business.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you are tuning into It's Rainmaking Time. This is Kim Greenhouse. I'm here with Trevor James Constable, who is a weather engineer who has been making it rain literally for over 30 years. He also has the ability to eliminate smog and to set up devices around the world that eliminate smog and clear the air. There is also the opportunity to prevent hurricanes and to deactivate them prior to them manifesting. And this is available for most of us that are listening. We're quite aware that the United States of America and other places around the world have been going through geographical heartache and havoc with earthquakes and hurricanes and tsunamis and all types of earth changes. Mr. Constable, what do you say to the people that are genuinely concerned that associate rain and the weather with God? In other words, in many contracts, sometimes, let's say with an insurance company, it'll say, we can't be responsible for, quote, acts of God, like the weather.
Yeah.
And so a lot of us intuitively associate weather with like an act of God, like the way it is, the universal desire. And some people even say, well, if an entire society was cleaned out by a hurricane or the earthquake that just happened in Pakistan, well, that's God's way of saying that needed to happen, and it's good for population control and all kinds of things, and it's survival of the fittest. There's all kinds of ramifications of what people say to themselves about why even some terrible things are good for the greater good. How would you speak to the people that say they have a concern, they're open to you and what your contribution is, but they're very concerned that they don't want a man or a group to play God? And that something having to do with engineering weather puts one in a position, in effect, of playing God. You can understand that, can't you?
Sure, I can.
That concern.
Sure, I've been accused of playing God more times than I have fingers and toes.
But what would you say to them to put them at ease that intervening with weather, you're really on a certain level a facilitator, correct?
Yes.
Kind of like a midwife.
Right.
Acting as a midwife to weather.
That's exactly right.
That's how I see it. But other people would see it like you're, quote, controlling the weather. What is true?
Well, neither of those things, really.
Okay.
Neither of those things. Basically, it comes to you into possession of certain knowledge that permits certain things to be done that are not otherwise done. They're not done conventionally. They are beyond the capacity of conventional meteorology to do these things. But if by pursuing new knowledge I find out something about how to do something that is beyond the conventional people, then I should be able to do it, I feel, especially if I make available to them the means by which I do it, which is an empty tube. There's no big secret to weather engineering at all. It's possible to do it. So it's no different really to doing anything else in the world that's possible to you technically.
Could you see how some people would be afraid, though, just let's say they totally understood the frame of reference. They understand that your work is intended from pure heart. Mm-hmm. but a concern that if that knowledge became more readily available, that there could be manipulators of the weather.
Oh, I'm sure they're concerned about that, but I would be too. I'd be just as concerned as they are about manipulators getting into it. And that's true of everything. You know, why do we have guns?
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
The same principle.
Why do you think there are droughts that continue in certain parts of the world?
Well, because droughts tend to be self-reinforcing.
Talk about that.
That's the nature of the beast. That when the moisture disappears in a given area, or you don't have rainfall, what happens is that the ground dries out, and the atmosphere, the ether, cycles in a completely different way to what it does when rainfall is normal. So that drought becomes self-reinforcing. The etheric potential of a droughted area goes down, and that means that the energy flows out of that area into surrounding areas. That's how a drought works. That's why all droughts tend to be self-reinforcing. You follow that?
Yes, I do. So let's take the Sudan in Africa. Does a drought have to do with, or this phenomenon have to do if there's a nearby body of water?
Well,
like
it does.
A lake
it
or
does.
Ocean or anything?
It does, definitely, because look at North Africa, is a gigantic desert. There is no rivers or anything there in the greater part of North Africa, so it's droughted automatically by that. Although there have been engineers who have gone in there and have created great artificial lakes with Reich-type devices.
Seriously?
Yes, indeed. Huge lakes in northeastern Africa.
You know people that have done
this? Yes, I do.
Are they still living and
with
us?
Sure.
And what the purpose of putting in lakes was to make it more habitable?
Right. Yeah, well, it just wanted water. So, they gave them water, and they had these huge lakes. The lakes were miles long. They were not anything pettifogging at all. Yeah, that was a gentleman up in Oregon did that several years ago now. I don't know.
And the lakes are still there?
As far as I know, they are.
Did he have to get permission to put those lakes
in? Oh,
in?
yes, he worked with the government.
Right.
Yes, you have to work with the government with weather engineering.
Is there a way through this technology and through your experience to calibrate, I don't know if I'm using the right word, but to calibrate the ability for a location, let's say the Sudan, which is in a droughted state most of the time, to have rainfall?
Yes, I'm sure you could. I'm sure you could do that, but it would be an ambitious project in the sense that you'd involve several countries in it, and you would have to bring the water up from the south into the Sudan. That's what the way it would be done.
I see. You'd have to go to a different location.
Right. Yeah.
By the way, that was fascinating in reading your book, Loom of the Future. One of the few books that I've read of yours, of the first three. I've also read The Cosmic Pulse of Life, and They Live in the Sky, and saw your 2 videos. But you could actually be in one country, and by the way you point the tube, have it rain in another location? Talk about that.
Yeah, well, the thing is that etheric weather engineering is not something that is done at a given point. It's done remotely from a point. For example, if we set up an apparatus here, we would make it rain, say, between here and Seattle rather than here.
How would we know that once you initiated it here and you set it up from here, the apparatus is here, how do you track where the causation comes from?
Well, you understand, first of all, that the flows that you are interdicting go from north to south in the northern hemisphere in the wintertime, and by blocking them, you cause them to build up. You prevent their flowing, temporarily. I'm just speaking on a temporary basis. And they will drop where they build up. There will be a drop of moisture where they drop up, where they build up. That's how it's done.
You said in your book on the Loom of the Future, there are unmistakable signatures to rain and just before the rain forms.
Right.
you talked about towing, brewing, and accretion.
Yeah.
Could you talk about those, please?